At least 9 people have been killed in a shooting spree that broke out at a McDonald's restaurant Friday in Munich, in Germany. A police spokesperson says, quote, "The shooting looks like a terror attack. It comes over a week after another terror attack that was in Nice in France that killed more than 80 people. For the very latest on this attack, we begin now with CCTV correspondent Ira Spitzer in Berlin. And Ira, what are you learning about this attack right now?
Well, as you mentioned, the death toll, according to the Munich police, is 9. They have also said that there are at least 10 injured in the attack. And in terms of the latest information, there is a possibility that one of those 9 people that are dead could be the shooter or one of these shooters. Police have not confirmed that yet, but they say there is a possibility that a body that was found about 1 kilometer from the shooting site could be the body of a shooter, and they are, according to German media reports, investigating that with robots designed to see if there might be any explosive device. So from the last information that the police have revealed, they did say that there could be up to 3 shooters still at large. Now, one of those could, of course, be the shooter that may have been killed, and we don't know definitely that there are 2 other shooters. Those are based on witness reports. So police following all the leads that they have and obviously taking every precaution, and in doing so they've essentially shut down the city of Munich, told people not to go outside, closed down the subway system, evacuated the main train station. So they are treating this right now like as an active crime scene, an active shooter situation, but we don't know if there's still people at large.
And is there a manhunt going on if there are 2 other shooters involved?
Well, they are exploring that option. Yes, there is a massive manhunt in Munich. They're acting on witness reports of seeing multiple people and hearing shots from different angles. So, but the only thing that we know for sure is that there was at least 1 shooter. We don't definitely know there were 2 other shooters, but police not ruling that out. And again, that is why they have established this very tight security situation in Munich at the moment. For the German government's part, the interior minister was actually had just touched down in New York, and he turned his plane around and is on the way to Munich right now to assess the situation in more detail. Tomorrow morning, there'll be an emergency cabinet meeting here in Berlin to assess the facts as we know them, and to look at any next steps. There's no motive that's even been speculated by the government. In fact, they've encouraged people not to speculate. Of course, online there's been waves of speculation, but there is no known motive right now for these attacks.
Okay, thanks, Ira. That's Ira Spitzer talking to us from Berlin. Let's go now to CCTV correspondent Kevin Ozebek. He's in Brussels. He recently covered the attack in Nice, where more than 80 people were killed. And Kevin, we've had attacks in France, attacks in Belgium, now another attack in Germany. Attacks that are being blamed on radicalized youth. What efforts are being made on a Europe-wide basis to counter this growing threat, this wave of terror?
Well, really, security has been high here in Europe since the Paris attacks in November of last year, and then security was heightened even more back in March after the Brussels attacks. And then just recently, when you think about it, in the past 8 days here in Europe, there have now been 3 terror attacks. Of course, we don't know the motive behind the current situation in Munich. We don't know if this was an ISIL attack or an ISIL-inspired attack, or if this is a domestic terror attack or someone who just had some sort of mental illness. But nonetheless, Europe has become a continent that really, there's a growing culture of fear here. And there's a lot of fear that a new era is beginning in Europe, where these attacks are just going to become more frequent. In fact, there's been warnings from both the EU as well as the United Nations in the past few weeks that as ISIL loses territory in both Syria as well as in Iraq, there could be about 2,000 foreign fighters who fled Europe to fight and train under ISIL, that they could now be pushed out of the Middle East and returning to their home soil and could be plotting new attacks. So European counterterrorism analysts and counterterrorism officials say this is a continent facing threats for multiple different aspects here. But of course, the main one on everyone's mind is the threat from ISIL.
Europe now has a European counterterrorism center. That is something that was created very recently in the wake of these attacks. How does it work?
Well, the main emphasis on that is sharing intelligence, and that really has been a huge push ever since the Paris attacks. There was a lot of criticism thrown at both the Belgian as well as the French governments for not sharing intelligence with one another. Well, certainly the culture within the intelligence community here in Europe has been changing and changed quite dramatically after the Paris attacks. There's been a lot of pressure from the public for the various intelligence agencies to work closely together, to work much more closely together. And EU counterterrorism officials, including the very top job there, the EU counterterrorism coordinator, says he has seen such a dramatic improvement in intelligence sharing. But then you have the attacks like the one in Nice, where Mohamed Boulel, the man behind that attack, was not known to French counterterrorism analysts. Obviously, it looks like whoever is behind the attacks in Munich likely was not on the radar of German officials, or else the attack probably wouldn't have been as successful as it is right now. So also you have the issue here where there are certain people who are under the radar who don't on the surface pose a threat. They don't leave any sort of digital footprint that intelligence agents can pick up on, and it's impossible to thwart every single attack. So it's a very tough task that has been placed in the hands of agents here in Europe.
Thanks, Kevin. That's CCTV's Kevin Ozebek reporting from Brussels. Now for more, joining me here in the studio is Rolf Bullmann. He is a correspondent for the German media network ARD, and he is Deputy Bureau Chief for ARD Radio in Washington, D.C. He's also from Munich and has been talking with his family there since the shooting attack took place a few hours ago. Also here with us is Ansgar Graw. He is a senior political correspondent for Die Welt. Also with us is Rebecca Zimmerman. She is an associate policy analyst at the RAND Corporation. And from Paris, we're joined by Joav Toker. He is a professor of international relations with the American Graduate School in Paris. Thanks to all of you. Rolf, let me start with you. As I've just said, you are from Munich. You know this area. You've been talking with family. What have you been hearing there?
Well, this has been one that hit really close to home for me. I lived very close by before I moved to the States 4 years ago. I've been to this McDonald's restaurant where it all started. I've been to the Olympia Einkaufszentrum where it all happened dozens of times with my family, with my wife. Thank God family is okay. They've been out of town. I've just talked to my brother-in-law that was the only one who was with his family in downtown Munich. He has been told over the radio to stay at home, to not go out. It was 11 p.m. local time when I last talked to him, and they were just saying, let's go to bed because there's not much you can do.
Now, the people who are in the city center right now, are they able to get home?
They can get home, but the police asked them to go home fast and to not linger on the streets.
Right. Ansgar Graw, this is not the first attack in Germany. Of course, there was an attack just a few days ago on a train in Würzburg, which is in the same state, isn't it, in Bavaria?
Yeah, it's maybe 150 miles away from Munich. In this case, it had an Islamic background. We don't know exactly whether we have this background in this case, but in this case on Monday in Würzburg, there was a young man who claimed to be from Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the investigators think he was not from Afghanistan, but from Pakistan. He injured 4 or 5 people randomly in a train with an axe and with a knife. Fortunately, he couldn't kill anybody, and in the end, he was killed by police when he attacked a law enforcement officer.
What?
And there was a background since he uploaded a pledge to ISIS online.
Now, 2 attacks in just a few days. Why, Ansgar, do you think that Germany is being targeted in this way?
Hard to say. We know that ISIS is against Western states, and especially Western states who are in any form of coalition, for example, in NATO and with the United States, in Afghanistan and so on. But the other thing, we have a big refugee stream to Europe, and we know, we have learned it in Brussels, we have learned it after Paris, the second Paris attack, that some of those perpetrators sneaked in hidden terrorists who sneaked into Germany and to Europe since the border security didn't work, since there came so many people at the same time. And therefore, we have to say in regard to security, Europe states, and especially Germany, doesn't know who is in Germany right now. And same goes for Belgium, same goes for France. And I think that's a big security problem.
Right. Rebecca, our reporter out of Berlin, he alluded to the fact that ISIL could be involved. And we should say at the outset that we don't know who's involved at this stage. Very little information coming through. But if that is the case, and the pattern seems to show us that that could be the case, is this ISIL making its voice heard in Europe? You know, it may be taking battlefield losses in Iraq, but it's saying we're still effective, we're here, and we can still carry out these attacks.
So again, of course, there's a lot that we don't know.
Right.
You know, it's also been said that this is an anniversary, a 5-year anniversary of Anders Breivik's attack in Norway, so it could possibly be related to that. We just don't know. If it is in fact ISIL related, and if it turns out that it's a multiple attacker scenario, something that even perhaps looks maybe like the Nairobi shopping mall attack, but maybe not as thoroughly executed, then I think we have to look at this as being something that's more linked to ISIL core in Syria and Iraq. So for example, so the case earlier in the week, the young boy with the axe on the train, that's more the lone wolf type of attack. If this turns out to be multiple shooters in a coordinated fashion, it's probably more linked to ISIL core. And there is a theory that as they lose ground in Iraq and Syria, they'll be more likely to make their presence felt in some of these sort of soft underbelly of Europe targets.
And if there are lone wolf attacks, or even if it's a very small group, maybe involving a cell of, what, 2 or 3 people, it becomes very difficult to detect.
Yes, and the cells of 2 or 3 people, it's never just 2 or 3 people. There's always a facilitation network that's helping them to get supplies, and that is dealing with some of the communication back in the direction. There will be an imprint there. If it's a lone wolf attack, it really is a matter of searching the phone and trying to find, as in the case of the Nice attacker, text messages linking them to remote people who helped with facilitation and radicalization. And it's virtually impossible to find all of those.
Okay, let's bring in Joav Toker. He's in Paris. And Joav, you know, if we look at the attacks in Paris, are the people who carried out these attacks ideologically driven or perhaps inspired by some radical interpretation of their religion? Because in France, we've noticed that a number of these attackers actually have criminal backgrounds.
That's true. That's true in France. That's true elsewhere. There are so many things to say about, indeed, the nature of the linkage between so-called religious beliefs or theological aspects and the acts which we have seen on the terrain. It's much more complicated than that. We've seen, and a lot of things have been said over the last 2 years or so regarding the radicalization phenomena and the multiple reasons for that. So we should be, of course, extremely, that will be the 7th or 8th time we're saying on the show that we should be extremely cautious as we attribute what is happening right now in Munich and is not solved. It's far from being solved either operationally or in terms of us understanding what the facts and the circumstances are. But my take would be that whatever the facts, the concrete operational facts in Munich are, and whatever the circumstances are, that in a way, through a different kind, a larger prism, it doesn't make a lot of difference. Because what we see is that we have a major metropolitan European city, Munich, with almost 2 million inhabitants, in sort of an extreme, awkward, strange situation in which the population is asked to stay at home or to make sure it doesn't go out. The public transportation is out. Now, whether we are going to find out that indeed ISIL could be, or ISIL-driven motivation could be involved here, or whether it be rather linked to mentally disturbed individuals, or whether it has some connection to extreme right movement in Germany, it doesn't make any difference, because the overall context makes the situation as serious as it is, and in this terms, the fallout are in a way are not distinguished by the fact that we're speaking about radical Islam motivation.